Hi everyone, so the Season 8 PTR is just around the corner. I've been cooking builds already, and one thing that people seem to be really hyped about are the new Hydras, which I think actually have some real potential. So this is something I have previewed on a campfire chat, and I've been making a setup here that I will show off shortly, but it's around this new unique neck here. There's a Hydra based item. So first of all, they buffed Hydra itself by just 50% baseline. And then they made this item here and they changed some of the aspects. And now you can make Hydra a core skill. It doesn't cost anything baseline. And you can use an aspect to consume all of your mana to mega buff it. And all of the extra Hydra heads that you would otherwise have, for example, from being healthy from the skill itself, from the +2 on the neck. And then there's a tempo on a weapon that currently exists that can give you up to +12 heads. All of that can become a bigger multiplier and grow your Hydra. So instead of getting more heads, it becomes larger and well, stronger. So I don't know how many heads they had here in this screenshot, but I imagine this thing is gonna get a lot bigger than that. And people are joking around with like the world boss Hydra popping out or something. So we'll see how big that thing can really get on Tuesday. But it sounds like a pretty funny scenario. So in addition to some of the buffs I mentioned, they also reworked, for example, this aspect here. So Hydra consumes all mana to increase its damage by 2.5 per mana spent. That is a pretty ridiculous modifier, because baseline you already have 100 mana. You can easily increase that to like 150 just with like Tibbot's Will, for example. And then you can put this thing on a two-handed weapon. You can get something like a 700, 800, even like 1000% plus or so if you, for example, equip Shaco as well. So this is an insane damage buff. And you just need to make sure that every time you cast your Hydra, every few seconds or so, you don't have to cast it very often, you fully regenerate your mana. So this is kind of like an important piece here of the puzzle, in addition to the neck. And they also did some other small adjustments here of aspects that I decided to throw in there. So for example, you have the 3 curses aspect renamed to Flash Fire, and that now works for all of your fire skills. Lots of crit damage here. Battle Castles has been buffed to 10 ranks, which is kind of nice. But I'm not 100% sure about this because you actually get a lot of skill ranks if you try. Since Hydra is now a core skill, you can actually use stuff like Star Disguise, core skill ranks on gloves, and like a Perdition Helm. So there's a few different variations here of something I made around this whole combo, and we'll see what happens. Another thing is also that is a little bit unintuitive, I guess. The Hydra enchant will probably not really be used for this, I think. It's still like a little bit of a damage buff, but realistically, it doesn't benefit from this, you know, consume all of your mana to get more damage and stuff. So this will make this kind of weak, especially if you build more into this like resource scaling later on. So right now I don't really expect this, but maybe it could be used as like an extra thing, or there might be some other perks of just having more Hydras out, but overall don't really see that right now. But these are the setups I made currently just to kind of like cook something in ahead of time. So we have a baseline to go for. So if you're logging in on Tuesday, for example, for the Hydra, right now I can't really show any gameplay unfortunately, but you'll definitely see that when I get to play it. And I think it's going to be pretty fun. So there's mostly just a few variations of, you know, how you will spend your mana or generate your mana, or I'm not 100% sure if, for example, something like Star Disguise can fit in here. This is going to be maybe something for like high-end pushing, where you try a little bit harder and you try to, for example, keep up this buff here with spending something every 3 seconds, and you go for less cooldown and less defense. For example, with like a Hail of Warglass here, there's like an Ice Shards variant, where you do this and then you get a huge damage buff from the helm, which is now 100%, and you just spam Ice Shards in between casting your Hydras. The Ice Shards not really contributing any kind of damage, it was just there to give you the buff, for example. You can do something similar with Ear of Perdition as well, then you don't have to do the Ice Shards shenanigans. So we'll see exactly how the cooldowns will like feel and play out. But I think like kind of like the standard variant for like late game would be something like this here, where we go for Shaco. We can also get more resource here, which is actually like a nice little extra damage buff of somewhere in the range of like 15 to 20% that you get for free, in addition to you know, what you get otherwise on the Shaco, like the cooldown, the life, the 4 ranks, and so on. So this is like slightly weaker than having, for example, the Perdition equipped, but you have these, you know, insane defense buffs. You have the cooldown that makes everything smoother. For example, the Inferno casts are pretty important. You want to have that as often as possible for the extra 50% buff. And also the extra just like life and defense, like it's going to be like super tanky. You have a teleport every few seconds, teleport enchant much more often. So I think this is going to be a very comfy variant here. No starter sky stacking, lots of cooldown. So the way that I imagine this being played is mostly you try to get enough mana regen so that especially with primordial bindings, you get just full mana every like around 3 seconds or so. Cast a Hydra, teleport around, cast another Hydra, teleport around, and everything else is just kind of a utility buff. You see we have Inferno, so you want to cast that whenever you can, especially on the elites. Then we have teleport, of course. We have ice armor. This should easily reset as well, because every time you spend 50 mana you get -1 second. So we spent like either around 150 or even 200 mana in one go with the Hydra. So this is just like one cast and you get perma ice armor effectively. And ice blades, I actually just put a 1 point in there. I didn't even go for the cooldown here, but I guess we could. But realistically, I don't expect that to be really that impactful without Ice Blades enchant and so on. So I kind of just saved the 2 points. Just kind of there to have another conjuration, give us primordial binding. We get also familiar enchant for primordial binding. You need to get to 10 summons somehow. So we have the blades, the familiars. We have 2 Hydras out. You can get another 2 if you use the Hydra enchant. But again, as I mentioned, the Hydra enchant is not really going to contribute very much here. I think it's just kind of more Hydras that barely do anything. But we also have the wolves. So I put in Nagu and Se. So this is like a pretty nice rune word combo here. That's also used already for other Sorc builds and just kind of solves all the problems here otherwise. So it gives you freezes as well. It applies vulnerable, which Inferno can do as well, but you don't have to do it like on every target all the time. And then you have all the summons you need for the primordial binding. Another important piece of the puzzle here with the rune words is Neo and Zek. So this just gives you effectively double the amount of cooldown recovery for your ultimates. So for example, the 8 seconds here is just going to become 4 seconds instead, because every 2 seconds you get another -2 seconds on your cooldown. And with 4 seconds, this is pretty much exactly the duration of Inferno, so you can keep up this 50% damage multi all the time, and you also pull in enemies all the time, so that is pretty useful when you actually have this AoE damage effect from the Ophidian Iris. Another cool thing about this setup is also that you get 100% crit chance extremely easily because of the fire build. We also have stuff like Invoked Hydra. In fact, you only need 18% crit chance on your sheet, which is nothing. You actually don't have any crit rolls. You just get it from like existing with dexterity, for example. If you have enough dexterity, you get that easily, plus the 5% baseline. We actually overcapped on crit basically. Without having anything, without even Perdition or Starless or no item that has any crit chance, because you get 30, and then you have the Azus here, so you get another 40, and you also have the Paragons, where you get another 12 from Searing Heat. So overall you get 82% extra crit. And the only thing to know here is that Invoked Hydra cannot proc from the Hydra itself, but any other thing you do can proc this. So this includes the wolves, the ice blades, whatever. You don't have to worry about this at all. And that's also pretty much everything there is to know here. The rest is mostly just like trying to pick up more damage and some good utility along the way. But yeah, mostly very typical Sorc stuff, I gotta say. So we have, you know, like Inner Flames, Devouring Blaze, the cold passives here. We have this kind of stuff. And the Paragons is mostly also just like stacking more damage with various ways. There are some pretty strong glyphs here, like the Conjurer glyph. The primary effect scale is pretty high. There's also the Destruction glyph that has a lot of additive damage with each dex here, 33.4. And I just included those glyphs here for just getting a bit more damage. Obviously, what I made here is kind of like the high-end variant where we have all the pieces online, but at least this is where we can like start a testing, I guess, when it comes to PTR testing. You can get all the items easily from the boost, so you can try to make exactly this. And then we'll see exactly where, you know, like earlier steps in the progression will land exactly. You'll probably have to focus a little bit more on, for example, mana regen in order to make sure that you actually get like full mana every few seconds so you can cast your Hydras. So this is mostly done with here in endgame with like 1 mana per second roll. Maybe early on it would make a second one when you don't like have like a high value, or you don't really get to, you know, high primordial binding stacks or something like that. So this might be important here. You might have like a normal chest and put another mana roll, but 1 in the end game should be just fine, because it puts your base mana regen to something like 16, and then you get like the multipliers from resource generation from your stats and from the shroud. So even like this, it's already 23 mana per second, and then with another 160% bonus, we're talking about like 70 or 65 mana per second or something like that. So in a pool of like 150, that's like 2.5 seconds. And even if you have like a pool of 200, for example, that's 3 seconds. So it goes pretty fast. And yeah, I don't really have any worries about that. So just wanted to show off the setup here real quick. I'm very excited to try out this new Ophidian Iris and a Hydra build. So I think that's going to be good. I'm not sure if it's going to be the best Sorc build out there, but it should definitely be near the top. Just like looking at the numbers a little bit. Hydra does start at a pretty low point, but it is getting some ridiculous buffs. Like this thing is like a, times 10 or something of alternatives. The new Serpentine aspect is like a times 10 or so. And it's kind of a crazy how much they have buffed Hydra, to be honest, in order to be somewhere in a viable range. But yeah, it is going to be pretty fun. So stay tuned when I actually get to play this. But for now, you can take this planner, plus what I just explained, maybe tweak it a bit if you feel like it. And good luck with that on the PTR. So for now, this is what I got here. I'll have a few more things to share ahead of the PTR. And then, of course, stay tuned for all the stuff we're testing. There's a lot of new and changed builds out there.